Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so forget that old story, the simple subscriber race, the streaming landscape. It's gotten seriously interesting lately.
Yeah, it really has.
We're seeing the big players, Netflix, Disney, Warner Bros., Discovery. They're all making really distinct, kind of different strategic moves now to win your attention.
Absolutely. It's definitely not just about who racks up the most signups anymore. So today, our deep dive is really into these core strategic shifts, what these giants are actually doing.
Right.
We've got some articles talking about the new game plans, plus viewership numbers from Nielsen, revenue forecasts from eMarketer, that sort of thing.
Good stuff.
And our mission really is to get under the hood, understand how they're aiming not just for growth, but for, real engagement, profitability, and what it all means for how you end up watching TV.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Starting with Netflix. I mean, they basically kicked off this whole streaming craze. And they've made a pretty significant pivot, it looks like. Their main focus seems to have shifted away from just chasing subscribers.
That's right.
Now it's something they're calling engagement. They don't even really highlight their subscriber accounts like they used to.
Exactly. Netflix is thinking, well, the way they've explained it is that how much time people actually spend watching, interacting with the platform.
Right.
That's the real measure of customer satisfaction. And happy customers, the thinking goes, they're less likely to cancel. Simple as that, really.
Makes sense. And we've got some data, right? It gives us a snapshot of where they actually sit in the viewing world.
We do. Nielsen's latest numbers from March, they show Netflix capturing about 8% of the total watch time on connected TVs here in the U.S.
Okay, 8%. How does that stack up?
Well, they're ahead of their direct paid streaming rivals, but they're still behind YouTube. YouTube grabs a much larger slice, about 12%.
Wow, 12%.
Yeah. But what's fascinating is that Netflix knows this. I mean, co-CEO Greg Peters even said there's, and I quote, plenty of room to grow that engagement.
So they're not satisfied with 8% then. They're actively trying to get more of our viewing time.
Precisely. And, this intense focus on keeping viewers glued to the screen, it's got a very clear financial angle.
Ah, the advertising part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at their rapidly growing ad ambitions, more viewing time just means more chances to show ads, more impressions.
Right. So what are the numbers looking like there?
What eMarketer is predicting, Netflix will pull in something like $2.2 billion in U.S. ad revenue this year.
$2.2 billion. Okay. Yeah. How does that compare?
So it's still less than Hulu, which is around $2.7 billion, kind of similar to Peacock. But here's the kicker. Last year, Netflix's ad revenue was only about $0.66 billion.
Whoa, that's a huge jump.
Massive. And they're forecasting it to hit $3.12 billion by 2027. That's a really steep upward curve.
So they're serious about this ad business.
Very serious.
Yeah.
And John Conca, he's an analyst at Third Bridge, he points out that Netflix has huge potential here as they keep building out their own ad tech.
Right. It's not just about sticking ads in, it's about the whole system behind it.
Exactly. Building a sophisticated platform for advertisers.
So, okay, let's bring this back to the viewer. For you watching at home, what does Netflix prioritizing engagement actually mean day to day?
Well, it likely influences the kinds of shows and movies they greenlight.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe even how the platform itself feels, how it's designed.
Like those vertical videos they've been trying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sort of inspired by TikTok and YouTube. It suggests they'll be looking for content that really grabs you quickly and, keeps you scrolling, keeps you watching. Less passive viewing, maybe.
Interesting. Okay, so that's Netflix leaning hard into engagement in ads. Now let's shift gears, maybe look at Disney.
Okay, Disney.
Their strategy, from what we're hearing from people inside their streaming teams, it's still very much focused on getting new subscribers.
Right. Especially getting people into their bundles. Disney Plus, Hulu, ESPN Plus Gay.
Yeah, the bundle is key for them, it seems. But it's worth noting, while adding subscribers is goal number one, engagement isn't totally ignored, is it?
No, not at all. One of those Disney streaming employees mentioned that viewership numbers are still, a really key way they judge if a show or movie is a success.
And whether it's actually driving those new signups.
Exactly. It all connects. But there's a caveat here. Joe Bonner, he's a media analyst over at Argus Research, he emphasizes that Disney isn't just chasing growth at any cost.
Right.
Their aim is for profitable growth. So they want more subscribers, yes, but in a way that actually helps the bottom line.
Makes sense. They need it to be sustainable. So, okay, if Disney's main game is still subscriber growth, what might that mean for you, the viewer?
Well, it could mean you see a wider range of content, maybe. Stuff aimed at different demographics, trying to cast a wider net to pull people in.
And probably a continued big push on those bundles, right? Making it seem like a really good deal to get all three services together.
Absolutely. That bundle strategy seems central.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Disney. Now let's turn our attention over to Warner Bros., Discovery, WBD, and their service, Max.
Okay, Max. Their strategy feels quite different again, doesn't it?
It really does. It seems very centered on making the service profitable. That's the key word.
So not necessarily about having the absolute most viewers or even the highest engagement like Netflix.
Perhaps not in the same way. It feels more like their priority is creating quality content that stops their existing subscribers from leaving, minimizing churn.
Right. Keeping the people they have. We've heard their CEO, David Zaslav, talk about this, haven't we? Not wanting to just flood the zone with tons of content.
Exactly. His comments suggest a more selective approach, focusing on, quote, the best stories, and also really leveraging the strong library they already have, high-quality stuff.
So the bet is that this focus keeps the base stable.
That seems to be the idea. And, their bundling deal with Disney Plus and Hulu is interesting, too.
Yeah, how does that fit in?
Well, even if Max doesn't reach the sheer scale of Netflix, or maybe Disney Plus, you could say it has a lower ceiling, perhaps a really crucial thing for WBD, especially with their debt situation,
Is that it's profitable.
is that it's profitable.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's paramount for them right now.
Okay, so for the viewer, how might WBD's profitability focus affect what you actually find on Max, what shows up?
Well, it could mean they're maybe more strategic about what they make, perhaps fewer shows and movies overall.
But maybe investing more in those productions, higher quality, bigger bets.
Potentially, yeah. Things that are more likely to really resonate and keep people subscribed. We might also see them being, more careful about when they release things, managing costs, and keeping that subscriber interest steady throughout the year.
Right, pacing it out.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting contrast. So let's zoom out a bit now, look at some of the other players and maybe some broader trends.
Good idea. Amazon's move is worth mentioning. They've been really aggressive in the streaming ad space.
Oh yeah, with the opt-out strategy on Prime Video, right?
Yeah.
Ads are now the default unless you pay extra.
Exactly. And that instantly gave them this massive audience for ads. Just boom, overnight practically.
That's a bold play. And they have an advantage there too, don't they?
A huge one. John Conca, the analyst we mentioned, highlighted this. Amazon has all that shopping data.
Right, from the main Amazon site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which lets them target ads in ways that, well, most other streamers just can't match right now. That's a powerful tool.
Definitely. Okay, who else? What about services like Paramount Plus and Peacock?
Right. So they're still very much in that growth phase, trying to build up their subscriber base. Paramount Plus saw, I think, an 11% jump in global subs last year, up to around 79 million.
Okay. And Peacock?
Peacock added about 5 million subscribers in the U.S. just last quarter. That brings them to roughly 41 million stateside.
So decent growth numbers for both, but they're not profitable yet, are they?
No, neither is currently profitable. Reports suggest they are getting closer, moving in the right direction, but not there yet.
And Joe Bonner, the analyst, he suggested something about them, didn't he? A potential merger or bundle?
Yeah, his thinking was that some kind of combination, whether it's a merger or just a tighter bundling deal between those two, might make sense down the line.
Yeah.
To achieve greater scale, better efficiency.
Interesting thought. And then there's Apple TV Plus books, kind of the outlier.
Yeah, Apple TV Plus is fascinating. They're known for, really high quality, often critically acclaimed content, prestige TV.
Definitely. But the library itself, it's quite small compared to the others, isn't it?
Is relatively shallow, yeah.
Yeah.
And that seems to lead to a higher churn rate, more people canceling after they watch what they came for. That's according to data from Antenna.
And Apple knows this is a challenge.
Oh, yeah. Both John Conca and Apple's own Eddie Q have basically acknowledged it's tough building a deep library completely from scratch like they are.
It really highlights the different journeys these companies are on, different starting points, different challenges.
Absolutely. And when you look at the whole streaming picture, that Nielsen data from March next year, it just hammers home how dominant streaming has become overall.
What were those numbers again?
Streaming accounted for a massive 43.8% of total day viewing for everyone aged 2 and up.
Wow, nearly half of all TV time.
Yeah, way more than cable, which is at 24%, or broadcast at 20.5%. Everything else combined was just under 12%.
So streaming is king. But even within streaming, it's fragmented, right?
Oh, definitely. Within that 43.8%, YouTube still holds the biggest single share at 12%, then Netflix at 7.9%, Disney around 5%, Prime Video at 3.5%.
And then a bunch of others like Paramount Plus, Oko, Roku Channel, Tubi Max, Peacock.
Exactly. Paramount at 2.3%, Roku Channel 2.2%, Tubi 1.9%, WBD Max at 1.5%, Peacock 1.4%, and then a whole chunk labeled other streaming at 6.1%. Just shows how competitive it is, even within the streaming universe.
So, okay, bringing this all together then.
Right.
The big takeaway seems to be that the streaming wars, as we first thought of them, that simple race for subscribers, everyone following Netflix's early playbook, that's really evolved.
Totally changed, yeah. We're now seeing these major players taking very different paths, adopting distinct core strategies.
It's not one size fits all anymore.
Not at all. You've got Netflix and Amazon too, increasingly focused on engagement, keeping you watching, maximizing that ad revenue.
Okay. Then Disney, Paramount Plus, Peacock. They're still really pushing for subscriber growth, bring new people in.
Right. While aiming for profitability eventually, but growth is still maybe the primary driver day to day.
And then Warner Bros. Discovery with Max, where profitability seems to be the absolute top priority right now.
Exactly. They're not all chasing the same single metric anymore. The goals have diverged.
So just to quickly recap the big three, Netflix pivots to engagement, boosting the ad biz. Disney keeps pushing subscriber growth, but profitable growth. WBD makes profitability the main focus for Max.
And we touched on Amazon's aggressive ad play using its shopper data, the growth paths of Paramount Plus, and Peacock not yet profitable, but growing, and Apple TV Plus's unique challenge with that high quality but smaller library.
And it's just so important for people listening to understand, right, these different strategies, these decisions being made in boardrooms, they directly impact what you experience.
Absolutely. It shapes the kinds of shows and movies that actually get made, how many ads you might end up seeing, how services get bundled together, what they cost. It all flows down to your screen.
Which really leads us to a final thought, something for you to maybe mull over. Which of these strategies, these different approaches, ultimately benefits you the most as a consumer?
Yeah, it's a great question. Are you more interested in just having a massive library, tons of choice, even if maybe you don't watch everything super deeply?
Or do you prefer seeing that constant growth in subscribers, hoping it leads to maybe a broader variety of content overall? Catering to more tastes?
Or does a more curated service, one focused on profitability and maybe delivering consistently high quality, even if less frequent, content appeal more?
It's the next stage, isn't it? And really, your viewing habits, your choices, what you decide to watch and subscribe to, that's going to play a huge role in shaping who ultimately succeeds and what the future of entertainment actually looks like.